Well, young violinists, in this case, in my case, look up to their teachers very, very much. And I remember all of my teachers very, very dearly. And my father was a very big influence on me. He was from Poland, and he had a great teacher named Leopold Auer, who taught Jascha Heifetz. And my father was a very fine violinist. He studied also with Karl Flesch and Paul Kohansky. And watching him play violin throughout my life and playing music with my mother, who played the piano, was my strongest influence, I'm sure, musically. I also had some other fine teachers over the years that happened to be Armenian by coincidence. A fellow named Mandukian and Kardalian, Serge Kardalian in Seattle, Washington. And I took lessons in Seattle. I would go from Portland, Oregon to Seattle for a lesson. That's quite a long distance. I would ride the Greyhound bus alone and go to Seattle alone as a young boy. Today you wouldn't do that. You would not allow that. But I was very, very young, you know. And Franco Gulli was my teacher in Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana. He was a fine violinist from Italy originally. And Sally Thomas was my teacher here in New York City. I had lessons with Ivan Galamian at Meadowmount School of Music in the summertime. Joseph Gingold for chamber music, for string quartets. And when I was younger, my generation that looked up to the new upcoming stars were people like Pinka Zuckerman and Itzhak Perlman and Kyung-Hwa Chung and trying to think who else. Well, Isaac Stern. These were very fine violinists I had access to see quite often here in New York City, their performances, etc. So that rubbed off on me, I would say. When we had a lesson with our teachers, we would practice very hard all week long. I didn't like to practice very much, but I still did. And I was talented, fortunately. But talent can sometimes be a detriment if things come easy to you with something difficult, you may not work hard enough on it. Some people who are not talented work very hard and they make a lot of progress. They have it almost better. But if you're talented and you do practice hard, then that's a great combination. Our lessons were very important, and we usually had a little bit of fear of our teachers. We had great respect for our teachers, but sometimes the teachers in those days were a little dictatorial. They would tell you, in fact, Serge Kardalian told me I had skipped one movement of one of the pieces of music I was supposed to be learning, and I learned the first movement and the third movement. And he said to me, "Greg, if you don't come back and play all three movements from memory, don't come back to me. I don't want to teach you anymore," that kind of thing. So it made me very angry and very hurt, but it motivated me to practice. Now, we dressed up for every lesson with a suit and a tie. We felt it was very important to dress up. Now, fairly recently I was doing some teaching, and a student came to my lesson, and he was wearing shower thongs and shorts and a t-shirt. And I didn't know whether I should tell him or not, but at one point I told his mother, who had been driving him to the lessons, that it's not respectful, it's not appropriate. And he must be oblivious to what that seems to indicate, either a lack of intelligence or a lack of respect. And either way, he should make it a point to dress a little more properly, a little more respectfully for a lesson. Also, I had a few female students show up dressed in very seductive outfits. And I explained to them that as attractive as they are, with nice physiques, that I'd rather not to see more than less of their anatomy. And they understood that. I think they might have even been disappointed in me, but basically they understood that they should dress a little more conservatively for a violin lesson. And I mean, people dress for a reason. They have different choices how they want to dress. So there is always a subliminal or a conscious decision to wear something which makes them look better, or takes the eye off of something, or puts the eye onto something, or brings attention to some aspect of their physique, etc. So I think if people can admit that they make choices, what color they wear or what they want to wear for various reasons, then they have to acknowledge that it does affect people who notice what they're wearing. It does affect them one way or the other. So I think it's important that for at least in classical music, we tend to dress a little conservatively. And also I want to mention that when classical musicians make faces, like they're miserable, or they're sitting on a pen or something sharp and it's hurting them, it's because they're caught up in the music. They're very passionate, or they're very excited about the music, or they're concentrating very hard. And they can be enjoying it very much, even though they look like they're in some kind of tragic, miserable situation. Some musicians are sincere, and they get caught up in the music and they get excited. And some musicians are acting, and it's part of the show. I don't think one has to be rigid or stiff in front of an audience, but I do think sometimes they overdo it. Should I give you an example? I thought you'd say yes. Now, I can play these notes like this. Something like that. I'm not sure what the exact notes are, but that's close. Or I can play. Right, that kind of thing. And I can also, if I play, I can play that, or I can play. Right? That kind of thing. You notice the difference? Or I can just play. So all I'm saying is that those are choices one makes, and you can always tell when someone's faking it, and when someone really is just enjoying the music. Now, don't forget some of these classical musicians, even some of the popular jazz musicians, they play the same thing over and over and over for years and years and years. So there has to be a little bit of a routine, sometimes a little bit of an act involved when they act like they're so caught up in the music, like as if it was the first time. So, but overall, the performance should be good, one way or the other. If they play very, very well, that's important. Now, technically, one can lose the sound a little bit. If they play like, for instance, like this, the sound of the violin is going this way. But if I play like this, if the violin's moving around a lot, then maybe the sound's going to be going all over the place. So sometimes being a little more steady, acoustically might be better for the projecting the sound of the violin. Capiche? That's a very interesting question. I'm sure there's at least two different schools of thought. If we go to extremes, we might try to create the old sound of the 18th century music with 18th century instruments that are set up with the 18th century strings, etc. So in the old days, this is Bach, it might have been played like this. In the old days, they didn't use vibrato. They were like this, music was played in churches. It was played kind of, let's say, for religious purposes. It was not very, let's say, a virtuoso performance where they're showing off their technical skills. Until like Paganini came along or Franz Liszt, they began selling tickets. It was a whole different operation, and they began showing off and doing playing more vigorously and all kinds of things. So then that same kind of music would be played nowadays, like. Sloppy, but the idea is that nowadays people would play with their own personality, and they might slide around and just do whatever they feel like doing. And people might say, oh, I love that musician, he's so expressive, doing so many things with the music, making so much personality out of it. But somebody else may say, oh, that's not correct, it's very selfish and indulgent to play old music with such an ego interpretation. Why not play it the way the composer wrote it, and not to exaggerate and overdo it and play it in such an exaggerated fashion? So my examples were a little bit not perfect musically. I played a little sloppy, and I kind of exaggerated to give you the examples of the extremes. But it does raise a lot of questions. However, I think the pleasure of the whole question and the answer is that, for instance, if you ask a person to draw an apple, and you ask someone else to draw an apple, you're going to get very different apples. And one might color it in and make it red and very juicy looking. One might make it black and white, very simple looking and very square. One may have more technique than the other. One might literally take a bite out of the apple in their drawing, show some teeth marks and everyone would create their own apple. It doesn't matter which one is supposedly superior or worse or better, but it's just going to be very, very different. So when you give someone a violin with strings on it, for instance, or a piano, you're going to see their personality, the way they play. So if they want to play with their own style, they're going to slide around, do their own thing, slow down here, play fast there. And if someone is much more traditional, or maybe has less of a technique, has less to say, maybe a more conservative person, they may play the very same music that's been played for 200 years, and they may play it in a very, very conservative, soft, traditional way. So that's the beauty and the fun. When you find a musician that you really like their style, you won't be aware of it perhaps, but you like the way they've decided to either leave their personality out of the composition, or they put their personality into it and really make it, in a sense, a very contemporary, spontaneous performance. Well, I think pretty much based on what I said a moment ago, when you're auditioning for a conservatory, you have to play in tune and show you have a good technique, show you're talented. I would suggest that, again, you're going to make choices which reflect your personality. If you like to play difficult, fast, virtuoso music, so you're going to program that for your audition. If you're a little more sophisticated, you want to play something more conservative and more traditional, you'll program things like that to play for the teachers at the conservatory. I think it's important to answer questions verbally, look the teachers in the eye, be friendly and be communicative, show that you can take direction, show you've got lots of energy within you, that you're not overly timid, that you're someone they could picture being on stage someday. You have to show that you're going to grow into a performer, that they're not wasting their time with you. And also, these teachers are very competitive with each other. So they want to say, that student is going to make me look better as a teacher. That student is going to win some competitions and play some concerts around the world, and they're going to mention my name in their biographies. Therefore, it'll bring me more students and more fame and fortune. So I'd like to say thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I think it's nice that you're interested in music and art, and you understand what makes an artistic person, what makes them motivated, what inspires them how they're getting along in life, how they're making some money or getting by, and surviving recently this COVID problem. I appreciate you're interested in me, of course, to some degree. I appreciate the support and the interest. I intend to play more concerts when things become back to normal. I conduct the Manhattan Symphony. In this case, the word symphony is spelled with an I-E. We've had the orchestra around for almost 15 years, and I'm very proud of the musicians in it, and we have cultivated some very fine musicians and some very nice programs. And we play for many occasions, Chinese New Year's and 9/11 memorial concerts and Christmas holiday concerts. And we do sort of pops concerts sometimes, movie soundtracks, and we do serious music also. We did Beethoven's Fifth Symphony recently, and we do some other things too. So, but thanks for your interest in art and music, and we hope that our culture and our people will find such communication and expression very important for our civilization. Thanks very much. And Happy New Year.